Hey, good day to you. This is Todd. I am a regular dude walking in the Word. Hey, this is episode 7 of Leviticus. And we're talking about the trespass offering today and how it points to Jesus. And this is taken today from Leviticus chapter 5, verses 1 through 13. I want to apologize for the past couple of days. We have gone, I try and keep these sessions to between 5 and 10 minutes. The past couple ones have been over 10 minutes because it's just the scripture is so long. There's so much information on that one offering, and I feel we can't break it up because it's a one piece, okay? But there's so much information with it. Keep in mind, when you lived in the Old Testament like this, you had to keep these things in mind, am I doing this right and stuff. But then naturally, the priest was there to help you and guide you through the whole thing. But it's a lot of different moving parts to all these sacrifices. And it wasn't just one sacrifice. A lot of times we get the idea as we're reading through the Bible, he had to go do a sacrifice, one sacrifice. But as you read through Leviticus, there's a whole bunch of sacrifices, okay? And we talked about the first ones that were voluntary sacrifices. And then we started yesterday with mandatory ones. The sin offering, which is dealing with the sin nature. I'm born with a sinful nature. Okay, so it's dealing with that. Today we're talking about the trespass offering, which is dealing with my specific sins. Okay, and so if I, go steal someone's car or lie to somebody or something like that, then these are sacrifices I do in those particular instances. Okay. So let's read here today. This is Leviticus chapter 5, verses 1 through 13. Okay? If anyone sins because they do not speak up, when they hear the public charge to testify regarding something they have seen or learned about, they will be held responsible. Okay? So you're called to testify, and even if you're not called and you don't testify, and you're supposed to, then you're in trouble. Okay, that's sin here. And you need to do a sacrifice for that. Verse 2, if anyone becomes aware that they are guilty, and if they unwittingly touch anything ceremonially unclean, whether the carcass of an unclean animal, wild or domestic, or of any unclean creature that moves along the ground, and they are unaware that they have become unclean, but then they come to realize their guilt, or if they touch a human uncleanliness, anything that would make them unclean, even though they are unaware of it. But then they learn of it and realize their guilt, or if anyone thoughtlessly takes an oath to do anything without, whether good or evil, in any matter one might carelessly swear about it, even though they are unaware of it. But then they learn of it and realize their guilt. When anyone becomes aware that they are guilty in any of these matters, they must confess in that way that they have sinned. As a penalty for the sin they have committed, they must bring to the Lord a female lamb or goat from the flock as a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement for them for that sin. Okay, so get this. You're walking down the road. It's night, it's dark, and all of a sudden you step on a possum that some chariot had run over. And the chariot had run over and killed this possum. And you stepped on the possum. Well, that's a big no-no to be touching a dead body, okay? A dead animal. And so you did that, and you didn't realize it at the time. But then the next morning, you go and you're walking along, and everyone's going around this possum, and you're like, oh no, I stepped on that possum last night. I thought it was just like a mud hole or something, but it was actually a possum. Well, you didn't intentionally go and purposely go and step on the possum, but you did step on the possum. Okay, so you were to do this sacrifice, and it spells out everything you're supposed to do with that sacrifice here. So let's keep reading here. Verse 7, anyone who cannot afford a lamb is to bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons to the Lord as a penalty for their sin, one for the sin offering and the other for the burnt offering. They are to bring them to the priest, who shall first offer the one for the sin offering. He is to wring its head from its neck not dividing it completely, and is to splash some of the blood of the sin offering against the side of the altar. The rest of the blood must be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. The priest shall then offer the other as a burnt offering in the prescribed way and make atonement for them for the sin they have committed, and they will be forgiven. Okay? So, we're talking about we stepped on a possum. We didn't mean to. It was just there, and I stepped on it. So now I need to sacrifice this lamb. But let's say I don't have a lamb, and I can't afford a lamb. There's always a way, and God here says you can do birds. Okay, so I can go and get birds. The birds are a lot cheaper than the lamb. So there's no excuse for not doing the sacrifice that, I can't afford it. No, you can afford the lamb. And if you can afford to sin, you can afford to do these sacrifices. Verse 11, if, however, they cannot afford the 2 doves or the 2 young pigeons, they are to bring an offering for their sin, 1/10 of the ephah of the finest flour for the sin offering. They must not put olive oil or incense on it, because it is a sin offering. They are to bring it to the priest, who shall take a handful of it as a memorial portion and burn it on the altar, on top of the food offering presented to the Lord. It is a sin offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for them for any of the sins they have committed, and they will be forgiven. The rest of the offering will belong to the priest, as in the case of the grain offering. So, you did this sin. You stepped on the possum. You didn't mean to, but you did, and so you need to sacrifice a lamb. Well, you don't have a lamb, and lo and behold, you don't have any birds either that you can buy because you're that poor. But you got to have grain because you're eating. So he's saying, bring the grain if you don't have anything else. And so you were to sacrifice that grain. Okay? Again, this is all pointing to Jesus. All right? And I wanted to point out today, you had those different things. You had that you could either do the lamb, you could do the birds, you could do the grain. And it wasn't, you weren't excluded if you're poor or rich or whatever. Okay? And our access to God through Jesus is the same way. Jesus provides access to all. Okay, and just like the sacrifice was accessible to all people, whether you were rich or poor. Jesus is accessible to all of us, whether we're rich or poor, or whatever we are. All we need to do is ask for His forgiveness. Okay, and so it's accessible to all of us. Okay, so I wanted to point that out today. So join me tomorrow as we continue looking at how all these offerings, and tomorrow we're looking at the guilt offering. So Lord's blessing. I will see you tomorrow.